Hi sweet friends! Today I want to share with you how to make the most of your sheet pan suppers. If you've ever struggled with your sheet pan suppers, getting things to brown up nicely and to cook evenly, I've got some tips to share with you today that I think is going to make your life a lot easier and your sheet pan suppers a lot more successful. When it comes to making sheet pan suppers, the first thing you're going to need is a sheet pan. Some people know it also as a jelly roll pan. I've got mine lined in aluminum foil for easy cleanup, but I know many of us are uncomfortable about cooking on aluminum, specifically in this case aluminum foil, but there's a quick fix. You can take a piece of parchment paper and put that right on top of your sheet pan. That'll protect your food from the aluminum foil, but at the same time make cleanup really easy. I do want to share one tip though. If you cook directly on aluminum foil, you may find that your food browns a little better than if you just cook it directly on parchment paper. Now, another quick fix, so to speak, to that problem is if you have a sheet pan that's made of stainless steel, and they are made of stainless steel in addition to aluminum, you can cook directly on your stainless steel sheet pan. The only difference is going to be cleanup's not going to be as easy. Next, whenever you're making a sheet pan supper, you always want to include some type of fat. By drizzling your food with some type of fat, it will help not only with flavor, but it'll also help with browning. And that's especially important if you decide to cook directly on parchment paper. A great fat to use for your sheet pan suppers is olive oil. I've got some Texas olive oil here, and we are going to make a sheet pan supper, which I'll share with you in a minute. Also, olive oil and butter together work really well, and you don't need to worry about melting the butter in advance. You can just dollop it around your food, and then halfway through cooking, you can toss things around a bit and then finish cooking. Another type of fat that works really well is clarified butter or ghee. They're both derived from butter, they just have the milk solids removed. Clarified butter has a more simple flavor, where ghee has a little bit more of a nice toasted flavor. The next important thing to keep in mind when you're making a sheet pan supper is what protein you're cooking and what vegetables will cook at the same rate as the protein. If you're cooking chicken, carrots, potatoes, turnips, root vegetables like that work very well and will cook at the same rate your chicken will take to cook. If you're cooking beef or pork in a sheet pan supper, the vegetables that work really well and will cook at a very similar rate to those types of meats are beets and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. Today we're going to make baked salmon, and the type of vegetables that work really well with fish are summer squash and zucchini. I also have some yellow zucchini here, which I thought would be fun to add. Cherry tomatoes work really well. Foods like broccolini work great. Asparagus work great. All of those will cook at a similar rate of your fish, as your fish. Now I'll go ahead and cook this on parchment paper so you can see how this turns out. This full recipe is in my cookbook, the Modern Pioneer Cookbook, and if you're following along, it's on page 292. Now in that particular recipe, I do use ghee so you can see and get instructions for how I dollop the ghee on the fish and the veggies, but today I'm going to go ahead and use some olive oil. So all I'm going to do is just put a little bit of olive oil on my parchment paper. Now I've got my side of salmon right here on my sheet pan, and if you're able to get a side of salmon from your fishmonger, all the better, because often you can get a better buy when you buy the whole piece like this as opposed to buying individual pieces or individually wrapped pieces. Buying a whole piece of salmon often is less per pound, so that's just a little tip I wanted to share with you. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set this aside and we'll cut up our veggies. Now I'm going to go ahead and save my scraps for my scrap bag for when I make bone broth or soup, whatever the case may be. And all I'm going to do is just cut my zucchini and my summer squash into bite-sized pieces. Now I'm just going to scatter this all around my fish, and then I'll go ahead and continue cutting up the rest of the zucchinis and the summer squash. So I've got plenty of squash on this sheet pan. So now I'm just going to go ahead and just scatter my tomatoes all around. You don't have to worry about cutting them or smashing them or anything. They're going to burst under the heat of the oven and they'll be gorgeous. when this salmon is done. Now I'm going to take some olive oil and just drizzle it across the veggies and across the salmon. And then I'm going to do a little bit of seasoning. Now, I'm not going fancy here, but you can always go as fancy or as simple as you want. I'm just going to use some sea salt, and then I'm going to use some black pepper, some spicy red pepper flakes, and another little ingredient which I'll share with you. Now, I won't do that noise too long for you on the camera, but I just want to say that if you ever have if your hands are ever a little stiff or something, but you really like using sea salt, but the grinder can be a little challenging, or a pepper mill can be a little challenging, I just love these electric salt and pepper shakers. My husband gave them to me for, I think it was a birthday present, and I absolutely love them. And they're made by Zwilling. I have no relationship to the company, but I'll be sure to put a link to them below if you're interested. But they are terrific. And they're made for sea salt. Now I'm just going to put some black pepper on the fish. I also put some salt and pepper on the vegetables. Now I'm just going to put a few red pepper flakes, but I'm just going to put these on the fish. Now what I've got here is a little maple sugar. It's just about 1/8 of a cup, not a lot. And I love sprinkling this on top of the salmon. It just makes for this kind of sweet and spicy type of taste, and we just love it. You could use maple syrup if you want. You do need to be careful if you use, a lot of times, you know, in our traditional foods kitchens, we like to use the unrefined sugar cane, the dried sugar cane. That can burn a little, so you need to be careful. But maple sugar works like a charm. And I'm wondering if coconut sugar might work well too. And I've decided to gild the lily a bit, and I'm going to dot this salmon as well as the veggies with a little bit of butter. And this is just unsalted butter from grass-fed cows. And so it's very nice. I found it, I normally often use the Kerrygold butter from Ireland, but I found this butter, it's from New Zealand. I found it at my grocery store, and it's so yellow. I just love it. The Kerrygold is yellow too, but this butter was actually even more yellow, and it was on sale, all the better. So I picked up some of that. So I'm just going to dot these veggies. And now the next thing that we're going to do is put this in a cold oven. And then you want to set your heat, you want to put it on the middle rack in a cold oven, and then turn your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And in 20 minutes, dinner's ready. Now I want to mention that sometimes, depending on what it is you're cooking, you may want to, halfway through the cooking time, toss the veggies. You do not need to do that in the case of these very easy to cook veggies, especially when you're doing fish. But if you're doing potatoes, for example, with chicken, it can be a good idea halfway through to toss the potatoes a little bit so they become evenly browned. But the nice thing about fish and the types of veggies that cook with fish, it's really not necessary. Everything's going to cook beautifully. I just wanted to pop in for a second in case you're new here and we're meeting for the first time. I'm Mary from marysnest.com and author of the Modern Pioneer Cookbook, and I want to welcome you to my kitchen. I'm so glad that you're here. Well, I just took the salmon and the veggies out of the oven, and they look glorious. Now, a couple of things that I want to mention. Number one, everyone's oven is different. Now, in my oven, I start with a cold oven. I go up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and within 20 minutes, this is perfect, exactly the way I like it. But everybody's oven is different. So if at 20 minutes you feel your vegetables or your fish don't look cooked, just give it a few more minutes and you'll be fine. Also, if you use a food thermometer, I tend to like my fish, or salmon specifically, cooked to 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, everybody's different. Some people like it a little more sushi, as I say. Some people like it a little more well done. I like it at about 145, an internal temperature of 145. So you can always test it that way as well. If you like it a little less cooked, just go like 135. If you like it a little more cooked, go to an internal temperature of 155. Now, if you don't have a food thermometer, don't worry. If the fish is flaking nicely and when you make a little incision, it looks cooked to the level that you like, that's perfect. Well, the fish is flaking beautifully and the veggies are cooked perfectly. What I love about this is that they're cooked through and they're easy to slice through the vegetables, but they retain some texture. They're not mushy. So let's give them a taste. Perfect. Let's get a little bit of this salmon on my fork. We'll give this a taste too. Perfect. Just a very delicious and easy meal. If you'd like more sheet pan suppers, as well as other easy dinner ideas, be sure to click on this video over here where I have a full playlist for you. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.